This channel is for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions. Hi, this is Joe. I'm going to talk about the market, and I'm going to give a update on a number of different markets, and then I want to show you a specific trade setup. I like doing this in conjunction with the analysis, but today it's going to be based on Bitcoin. So let me go through and get going on individual areas. We're going to start out with the S&P, and I've got a weekly chart on the left and a daily chart on the right. And I have these channel lines drawn in, these parallel channels, which are, you draw off the bottom. So you draw the trend line off the bottom, and then you create a parallel off the top of the range. So the S&P, actually, you can see it pretty clearly. It still has some room here, but it might not make it. It's very possible that it's running out of a little bit of steam. We definitely don't have confirmation with MACD. And when I look at MACD, I like to look at it with this prior peak here. I'm not necessarily looking at this peak. I like to compare the most recent peaks. I think that's pretty important to recognize. So that's the last piece. That is the last peak in price, and we want to compare that with the MACD. Don't go looking at MACD going way far back. It's not as useful. You try and stick with a window that's, somewhere in that area of anywhere from 8 to 15 bars in length. Okay, so that's that. And then obviously we haven't seen the ADX moving up. Now, one of the things that I'd be looking for is a move up where let's say this does end up pausing here, pulling back, and then finishing off the year maybe up towards this channel line and up towards the target area somewhere around 480. And in the process of doing that, we get the ADX to climb up to 25. Now, if we get up and we start to look overbought and in price, and this is coming up to the 25 line, that could provide a resistance level. So that's something we want to be on the lookout for, because the market has made a big move and this just hasn't been participating. We might want to be looking at 25 as being resistance for this line. So something to keep in mind. Now, in the near term, if we look at the daily chart, we made a higher high here in price, and the MACD is making a lower high. And then I like to look, I know the ADX is making a lower high as well, but I like to look at the DI, the top DI line, which in this case is green. And if you notice, it's making a lower high, but it also is making a lower low. Now, we don't have a higher high in red. We're making a higher low, but we're not getting, the sellers aren't strong enough to make that. If we can get that to come up above this peak, then all of a sudden we're working our way down, and this turns into a contraction phase. It's a lot more official if the sellers can take this back up through this peak here. So I want to make sure you understand that. So that's what I'm looking for. Right now, we just have momentum divergence, and this prior area here is support on the divergence. That's what I would be thinking. All right, let's go to the Qs. Now the Qs actually ran up and hit this upper channel line. I drew this in last week. Again, we want to draw it off the bottom first and then create the overbought channel line off this prior peak. So if you look at what's happened, we came up into this area and we have the same divergent pattern, lower highs, on this. We haven't created the higher high in the red DI, but notice the volume pattern is not very good. The red bars are bigger than the green bars. And we went up and poked into this upper channel line and reversed with MACD divergence. So, again, it's not necessarily telling us that the world's coming to an end, but we should see a test of this prior support area. That's kind of what the target is when you get this type of divergence. Now, if we look at the DIA just hasn't been as strong. We don't have much juice behind this move. We made a higher high here in price. MACD has not even been able to climb above its signal line, and ADX is clearly diverging here. So we don't have a lot of strength in this right now, but I don't consider it divergence until price tells us there's something wrong. And right now, this is just coming into support. It's not really breaking down yet. So I don't consider it to be an official divergence. It's possible divergence or, potential divergence, but just something to watch. If we get a sell here, a more definitive one, or if we get a 1, 2, 3 change in trend. I mean, I guess this would have been kind of an aggressive way to look at the 1, 2, 3, where you break the trend line, come back up, and test that low. Yeah, I mean, you could call it that. I probably at this point now, though, be looking for a test of the 18 and failure. See if that happens. If it comes down through here, then I would consider that a little bit more of an official reversal. So right now, I think we're sitting on pretty key support at 355 for the DIA. Now the Russell, I drew in this trend line. This is very important. This bothers me a little bit. We had a nice breakout bar. We didn't get any follow through, and then the following week, and now we've basically just sold off for 3 straight weeks. So I mean, this is not a sign of strength. The breakout was a really good sign, but the follow through is not that encouraging. It makes me think that we might end up channeling sideways for a little bit longer. It's crystal clear when you look at the daily chart over here. You can see the harsh selling that came in, and notice what happened to the ADX line. ADX line on the daily tried to break out. We had nice green, and then look at how it just gave it up. I mean, and red's already above 25 and above the green. So that just didn't last very long. It's very discouraging. And we never got green DI on the weekly chart back above 25. So these are things you have to. So we got to look at this as a nice breakout, but then follow through and look at new data points and see what it's telling you. And I don't think this is encouraging, at least between now and the end of the year. It kind of tells me this is probably going to wallow around as opposed to being a really dynamic trader. Oil has pulled back. It's sitting on a pretty key area around 75, 76, something like that. So far, it's holding. We don't have a lot of selling strength here, but we're starting to see a little bit of overrun in the MACD, which tells me this is probably going to take a little bit of time. But I think the key area to watch is around 75. Look at what happened to gold. I mean, gold tried to move up, and I keep saying this, especially to my subscribers, that it's not the breakout to me that matters. A lot of stocks and a lot of markets can make this move. It's how they handle the pullback, because you're getting a move up, and this is the first time these people are getting an opportunity to sell. And so I want to see how strong they are. And that's why I like to see a pullback that holds the moving averages, holds the breakout area. And that didn't happen. I mean, it came down violently through that. So we should know that the moment this comes down through this area here, it's a pretty big negative, and it had a lot of acceleration. So nothing going on here, back into a range. Pretty good support at 1750. So the 10-year is working sideways. And we've got this consolidation pattern in place. I think it's more of a neutral pattern. I just don't think it's ready to break out and head up towards 2 right now. I think ultimately it might, but that might not happen until early next year or something like that. We could be caught in this range right now between, somewhere around 145 to 175. And then let's look at Bitcoin. So Bitcoin rallied up, had a great signal we discussed a few months back, pulled back and held the 18-month line, had an opposing trend trigger here on the daily. We broke the trend line with a zero line reversal. Nice move to the upside. So what I want to talk about now is what's happened recently. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this to a daily chart and switch this to a 4-hour. And I want to show you a few things. So first of all, if you look at on the left, I have this line drawn. That is where it broke out and failed. You see how it rallied up? This was a key area. We can see it on let's just look at it on the weekly chart. You see how you rallied up, made a big move, got stretched away from the moving averages. And then now we've tested that on a daily chart. Now notice what happened here. We rallied up and made a new high in price, and we had a pretty significant lower high in MACD that did not cross the signal line. You see that pinch that developed? So we had a pinch as this was rallying up. So I call this a divergent pinch, a pretty negative pattern. We had green DI not confirming, ADX not confirming. So those are things that I'm watching as price is working its way back up into this area. So as this is coming up now, we look at the 4-hour chart here on the right, and you can see I have this trend line drawn in, this dotted trend line. That's based on the daily chart, but you could have accelerated the trend line, and I'm going to get rid of this stuff. So you could have accelerated the trend line on the 4-hour chart, and my reasoning is that you made a higher bottom here, and then you made a higher high, and the trend line coincides with the 18. You see how they're about the same? You know you're on the right track with your trend lines if it's about parallel with the 18. So I think that's pretty important. You broke the trend line, then you came down and tested the bigger trend line here, and then you eventually broke that and then rallied up. And what I would consider to be a 1, 2, 3. So this is not a 1, 2, 3 on this time frame, but notice what did happen. We had divergence. And then on this time frame, we had the 1, 2, 3. So this is the pattern we're looking at here, back to here, testing. This was a nice test of the prior high. And also notice how it was a test of this midpoint of this big, ugly decline. So a couple of key things there. And then as it started to work its way back down here, that would be the sell signal in this whole pattern. And notice how important this area was. This was getting back below this bigger trend line that I had drawn in, which was the prior high on the weekly chart. It broke the uptrend line that was the more accelerated one, and then it broke this uptrend line based on the daily chart, and we had divergence in place, and then you get your 1, 2, 3. I would be more aggressive here and be looking to short this here as opposed to waiting for the 3 on this pattern. I think I would look at this and look for a signal as this is coming back down through all these and coming back down through the 18. This is basically a classic sell signal when you went into the zone and then came back out. So this is something to be on the lookout for. Notice what was going on with MACD. It crossed down below the 0 line and then got a rally back up to it. And it was basically a pinch pattern. Notice how red DI was crossing back above and holding above 25 and holding above the green. So we had a number of signals here that really led to a nice play. Now, there was a secondary signal. We now know that the trend is starting to work lower off of this MACD signal. And notice what happened here. We had a strong ADX signal, a rally back to the 18. And if you go to go look at the 1-hour chart, in fact, we'll go ahead and do that over here. Look at these opposing trend signals. So there's one here and another one here. This one was a little late. It had already made a pretty big drop. I don't know that I would have been looking for that in this instance because it had already given me 2 signals. But anyway, I thought it was worth mentioning, going through this in a little detail and making you aware of how to use these higher time frame resistance levels to help frame out a trade for you. All right, that's the update for the week. So I am doing this Wednesday, actually right around the market close for Friday morning, just so you're aware. So hope everyone has a great holiday weekend, and we'll see you next time.